All right, let's dive into a story that's both fascinating and I think a little bit tragic. We're going to be talking about Jephthah, a judge of Israel, and a vow that he made that has really intrigued people for centuries.
Yeah, it's one of those stories that just makes you think about the weight of our words and the consequences that can happen even when you're trying to do something good.
So to set the stage, Jephthah's story starts out with some real hardship. He's the son of Gilead, but his mother was a prostitute. And this really sadly led to him being rejected by his half-brothers.
Yeah. And you can just imagine how much that must have hurt. To be cast out by your own family. Like, it's a reminder that even within families, things can get really messy.
Oh, for sure. It's a tough way to start out in life.
Yeah.
But instead of just letting this rejection defeat him, Jephthah heads to a region called Tob. And it's there that his skills as a warrior start to attract followers.
Almost a classic, like, hero's journey.
Right.
Right. He has to prove himself. And that's when the Ammonites, who are these, like, constant rivals to Israel, declare war. And the Israelites are desperate for a leader.
And who do they turn to? The elders of Gilead, the same ones who rejected Jephthah in the first place.
It's wild, isn't it? They come crawling back, begging him to lead them, offering him like the top spot if he wins.
Wow. Talk about a second chance, right?
It really is. But before he just jumps into battle, Jephthah takes a step back. He sends messengers to the king of the Ammonites, and he's like, look, we have a historical claim to this land. It was given to us. We didn't like steal it. He's trying to find a peaceful solution.
Yeah, he's not just a warrior, he's trying to be a good leader.
Exactly. But the Ammonites, not interested, they refuse to listen, and so the stage is set for a confrontation.
And this is where things get pretty intense. Jephthah, he's a man of faith. And so he makes this vow to God. He says, if you grant me victory, I will sacrifice whatever first comes out of my house to greet me when I return.
Whoa, that's a serious promise.
Yeah, it is. He's basically putting everything on the line. But what he doesn't realize is that this vow is going to have some pretty tragic consequences.
Oh, man. This is where things are going to start to go downhill, aren't they?
They really are. And his story is going to raise all these questions about faith, sacrifice, and the choices we make.
And sometimes the best of intentions can still go really wrong, right?
Exactly.
Hmm.
But we'll get into all of that after a quick break. So Jephthah, he goes into battle, makes this, pretty heavy vow to God, and, well, he wins.
Hmm.
But as he's coming home, it hits him.
Oh, yeah. Talk about a victory that turns sour fast.
Right. I mean, he sees his daughter running out to greet him, his only child, playing music and dancing, so happy to see her dad. But he knows.
And the text really captures that moment. Like, you can almost feel his despair. It says he tore his clothes, which was a huge sign of grief back then, and he cried out that she had brought him very low. Like, talk about a gut punch.
It really is. He went from this confident leader to, well, basically crushed under the weight of what he'd promised. But his daughter, she's the one who shows real strength here.
She does. Instead of begging for her life, she just accepts it. She says the Lord has avenged you on your enemies, on the Ammonites. Like, she gets it. The importance of her father's vow.
And it makes you think, doesn't it, about faith and duty and how those things can be, well, really hard to reconcile sometimes.
For sure. It's a totally different world back then, but it's still a powerful reminder of I don't know, maybe the burdens that faith can place on us.
Definitely. But Jephthah, even though he's basically broken by all this, he gives his daughter one last request.
Yeah. He lets her go up into the mountains for 2 months to mourn with her friends, mourn, the life she'll never have, the chance to marry and have kids. It's heartbreaking.
It really is. And you can imagine what those 2 months must have been like. The pain, the unspoken goodbyes. It really humanizes Jephthah.
Yeah.
Shows that he's not just this robotic figure bound by duty, but a father in agony.
Absolutely. And after those 2 months, the text just says, Jephthah fulfilled his vow.
And that's where things get a little, well, unclear. Did he actually sacrifice his daughter? Or did he dedicate her to a life of service in the temple?
Yeah, scholars have debated that for ages.
But either way, it's a tragic end to the story. A reminder that good intentions don't always equal good
Well,
outcomes.
they're like a warning sign, telling us to be careful with the promises we make, especially when it comes to matters of faith.
And even though Jephthah's story is so full of tragedy, it's also got these glimpses of resilience and, I don't know, maybe even forgiveness. Like
Yeah.
he was willing to forgive those who hurt him, lead his people even after they'd rejected him.
Right. And his daughter, she accepted her fate with like incredible courage. And it makes you think about the limits of sacrifice, right? And how far we're willing to go for what we believe in.
So we've really gone through the ups and downs of Jephthah's story.
Yeah.
But what can we even take away from it today? I mean, it all happened, what, like thousands of years ago?
Right. But that's what's so crazy about these old stories. They still, speak to us, even now. And for me, one thing that sticks out is how much our words matter. Like, when we make a promise, a vow, it carries a lot of weight.
Jephthah's vow, he made it out of what, desperation. But it ended up having these horrible consequences that he never could have imagined. It's like I don't know, a cautionary tale about thinking things through, especially when we're feeling really emotional.
It's so easy to just blurt something out, especially when you're in a tough spot. But Jephthah's story is like, hold on a sec. Think about what you're saying, because it could have a ripple effect. Like, it might impact you and the people around you in ways you don't expect.
Totally. It's like that saying, measure twice, cut once.
Uh,
But for our words.
exactly. And Jephthah's story also says a lot about leadership. Think about it. The guy was rejected, had to prove himself, but when they needed him, he stepped up. He was smart, strategic, even tried to avoid war altogether.
He wasn't just about fighting. He cared about his people. And he was willing to forgive, like let go of all that hurt and bitterness they'd caused him. That's a big part of being a good leader, I think.
It is. Being able to bring people together, even when there's a lot of baggage. Jephthah shows us that. And then, of course, there's the whole faith aspect of it all.
It's a tricky one, right? Because his devotion, it's admirable, but it leads to this terrible tragedy. So where do we draw the line? How much are we supposed to sacrifice for our beliefs?
Tough questions, right? Jephthah's story doesn't really give us easy answers. It just shows us how complicated faith can be. That sometimes, even when you're trying to do the right thing, it can go wrong. And we're left to figure out what it all means for ourselves.
I think that's what makes these ancient stories so powerful. They make us think.
Yeah.
They make us question. And Jephthah's story, it definitely does that.
It really does. So as we wrap up this deep dive, maybe think about this. What part of Jephthah's story sticks with you? What did you learn from it? What challenged you? Because even though it's an old story, it's got something to say to all of us today.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you found it interesting, maybe even a little bit thought-provoking. Keep exploring, keep asking those tough questions, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive into the stories that shape us.